There are so many YouTube videos out there, mine included, about what to do if you are innocent of domestic violence charges, if you were falsely arrested. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about what if you're guilty. My name is Veronica. I'm a domestic violence defense attorney here in California, and I help people put their cases behind them so that they can enjoy their lives and their freedom. And again, in this video, I'm going to be talking about what happens in a domestic violence case, how should you approach it if you're guilty. Okay, so let's jump right in. The first thing I want to ask you is, are you sure that you're guilty? I know that may seem like a really dumb question, but just because you feel guilty doesn't mean that you are legally guilty. And it definitely doesn't mean that your guilt can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. I've had clients who come to me and tell me that they are guilty, and then I ask them, well, what happened? Tell me about the whole situation. And they'll explain to me that the other person attacked them, and they pushed the other person away, or they held the other person back, or they slammed a door in the other person's face, causing that person to fall or causing that person to be injured. And after hearing the story, I explained to them, I don't think you're guilty. I think that you acted in self-defense. And if you acted in self-defense, if you acted to basically protect yourself against an imminent threat, against the other person hurting you, and you don't use excessive force on them, you just do what you have to keep them from hurting you, that's allowed. That's self-defense. It's a complete defense, and it means that you are not guilty. You are innocent. And now, even if you did something wrong, if you're guilty, what are you guilty of? For example, if you were arrested for PC 273.5A as a felony, and that's corporal injury to a spouse or cohabitant, and you push the other person, or you grab their arm, or maybe you even slap their face, but there's not actually any injury, there's no bruise. Maybe you slapped them in the face and there was momentary pinkness, but by the time the cops got there, there was no injury, there was no redness. You're not guilty of PC 273.5A as a felony or a misdemeanor because there is no injury. Now, you may be guilty of PC 243E1, which is a misdemeanor. It can't be charged as a felony, but that's a less serious charge. So even if you were arrested for PC 273.5, and that's what the cops decided to charge you with, maybe a prosecutor looking at this case realizes, okay, we don't have any injuries here, and so your case ends up being a misdemeanor instead of a felony. Second, even if you're guilty, you can still potentially get the case dropped before court. If there were not bad injuries, and if this is your very first time being arrested, then it is important that before court you have an attorney contact the DA and try to get the case dropped. Because after the police arrest you, when you bond out, they generate a police report and you're given a court date. But between the time that you bond out and the court date, the prosecution still has to look at this case and decide, are we going to file more serious charges against you than what you were arrested for, less serious charges, go along with what the cops did, or drop the case altogether. And for cases like domestic violence, cases where the cops do arrest you first and ask questions later, where they arrest you with very little investigation. These are cases where the prosecution, they simply don't have the resources to prosecute every single case. And so a lot of cases they are willing to dismiss. But to increase your chances, you really need to have an attorney contact them before court. And for these purposes, it doesn't really matter a whole lot whether you're innocent or guilty. I mean, frankly, the DAs are usually thinking that everybody who got arrested did something wrong. They're just trying to figure out if they can prove this case and if this is a really bad situation where the government really needs to intervene, or if they can give you basically a warning and let you off. And third, you can still potentially win at trial. In fact, I'm not sure that I would say that someone who is innocent necessarily has a better chance at trial than someone who's guilty. And it's sad that I'm making that statement, but it's true, because basically the big difference is that when someone is innocent, they maybe have more ammunition to use against the other side, but that's not always the case. I mean, usually in these domestic violence situations, this is something that whatever interaction happened, whatever incident happened, or whatever incident the victim is claiming happened, that happened behind closed doors. So there's generally not going to be definitive proof either way. Now, there may be text messages that can be used to show that the alleged victim is lying about some things. But all that shows is that maybe the victim isn't that credible. It doesn't necessarily show that the victim is lying about everything. I mean, one of the types of cases that can be really difficult for an innocent person to win is where the victim has sustained really bad injuries. So the DA has photos of bad injuries or medical records supporting that there were injuries there. And the victim is really adamant that the injuries were caused by the defendant. I've had multiple cases like this where the victim was drunk or high on drugs and slipped and fell. I had one where the victim had really horrific looking injury to her back, and she claimed that my client caused it. Well, her house was under construction at the time. There was construction material everywhere, and she was completely drunk at the time. Now, she and my client did get into an argument, and she was adamant that he caused these injuries. That case is difficult to win because for the jury, you're seeing, okay, she really was injured pretty badly, and then it's her word against his, but hers has the weight of the bad injuries that she had. Now, in a case like that, if you're the defendant, hopefully you will have some ammunition. Hopefully you'll have some text messages. You'll have something that you can use in your favor, but that case can still be difficult. And you can also be completely guilty, but maybe the victim is on your side, or maybe the victim gets caught in an exaggeration and you have an attorney who pulls that thread of that exaggeration and completely unravels all of the credibility that the victim has to the point where the jury doesn't believe anything that the victim says. Maybe the victim is really, really unlikable and you're completely guilty. But when the jury looks at all of this and tries to figure out, okay, do I believe this person's word, this unlikable person, this person who I've caught in exaggerations or lies already, do I believe this person beyond a reasonable doubt? And look, I know that this is an unpopular topic and an uncomfortable topic to talk about. I recently came across this quote that was, "You are more than the worst thing that you've ever done." And I think it's true. I think that people make mistakes. And I think that just because you made a mistake doesn't mean that you should give up. I mean, the penalty, the maximum penalty for PC 273.5A is 4 years in prison with a felony on your record. So even if you're guilty, now is not the time to give up on your future. Maybe now is the time to start looking at why this happened. What happened? If you lost your temper, if you were drinking too much, if this is a relationship that you should not be in, then maybe this is the time to start making changes there. I mean, if you find yourself in this situation, I'll link to you down below the therapy that I suggest to my clients. It's online therapy. And then from there, if you don't know why exactly this happened, you might be able to figure out, okay, here's what I need to work on. Here's what I need to do going forward so that this never happens again. And that can help you with your criminal case. That can help you, to let the DA know that you are going to therapy, that you're working on these issues. It can help you before court. But if you're feeling guilty and you're thinking, maybe I should just give up and accept my punishment, the legal system, the criminal justice system in California is not the place to do that. The place to do that is outside of the courtroom. So go and volunteer if you feel like you need to atone, whatever you need to do, but it's not the time to give up. You need to fight for your freedom and your future and then make positive changes so that this doesn't happen in the future. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do have a criminal case in California that you need help with, you can find my number down below. You can also book a consultation with me there. And if you did find it helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell.